A poor maid discovers the horrifying secret behind the millionaire's daughter's bedroom door. But when she tries to protect the child, she receives an offer that forces her to choose between money and her conscience. Before we discover her choice, let us know which city you're watching from. Please enjoy the story. And don't forget, at the end, we'll be waiting for your rating from 0 to 10. Part 1. The Beginning and the Conflict. Elena Torres took a deep breath as the taxi turned onto the stone-paved driveway leading to the Harper mansion. The house appeared before her, imposing and magnificent, like a castle straight out of an architectural magazine. But its beauty exuded a strange coldness. The sturdy stone walls, the vast glass windows, and the perfectly manicured garden seemed to maintain an invisible distance from the outside world. It felt more like a precious museum than a warm home. The man who opened the door for her was William Harper. He was tall, dressed in an expensive business suit, and had the air of a man accustomed to carrying the world on his shoulders. His eyes shone with intelligence but were also tinged with a deep sadness, something that not even a polite, formal smile could completely hide. "Welcome, Miss Torres," William said, his voice deep and somewhat distant. "The housekeeper will show you your work area. Everything in this house has its own set of rules. I hope you will acclimate quickly." He handed her a list of tasks, his tone professional and efficient, more like he was assigning a business project than welcoming a new employee into his home. When he mentioned his daughter, he paused for a moment. "My daughter, Lily, is 5 years old. She is quite sensitive. Please be mindful of her." For that brief instant, his stern expression softened with a trace of tenderness, then it quickly vanished behind the mask of a busy businessman. Elena nodded, sensing an invisible loneliness that permeated the vast space. She began her work in the near absolute silence of the mansion. The sound of her vacuum cleaner seemed to be the only living noise echoing through the immense hallways. Everything was clean and tidy to a sterile degree. She felt as if she were polishing frozen memories. While working upstairs, a faint sound cut through her thoughts. It was the stifled sob of a child, interspersed with a woman's sharp, cold voice, dripping with authority. "How many times have I told you? Don't leave your toys scattered around. Do you hear me?" Instinctively, Elena followed the sound to the end of the hallway, where a heavy oak door was slightly ajar. She carefully peered inside, and her heart clenched. In the middle of the luxurious room, little Lily was trembling, her small shoulders hunched. She clutched a worn-out stuffed rabbit as if it were her only lifeline. Lily's large, round eyes were full of tears, her face pale with fear. Facing her was a woman with flawless blonde hair styled in a perfect chignon. It was Vivien Blake, Mr. Harper's fiancée, whom she had been shown a picture of. She wore an expensive silk dress, but her elegant beauty was marred by the cruel expression on her face. A hand adorned with a diamond ring was raised, pointing straight at the child. "You will stay in here until you learn to obey. Don't even think about coming out." Vivien's voice was a harsh, impatient hiss. A surge of anger rose in Elena's chest. She couldn't just stand by and watch. Despite being a new maid, despite the risk of being fired on the spot, she knew she had to do something. She gently pushed the door open and stepped into the room. "Please stop." Elena's voice wasn't loud, but it was firm enough to make the room fall suddenly silent. Vivien spun around, her eyes narrowing in surprise and fury at the unexpected intrusion. "Who are you? How dare you come in here?" "I'm Elena, the new maid," she replied calmly, then stepped forward, gently positioning herself between Vivien and the trembling little girl. "Ma'am, I don't think a child should be treated this way. She's very frightened." A contemptuous smirk appeared on Vivien's lips. "Oh, look who's here to lecture me. A new servant. What right do you think you have to interfere with how I raise my fiancée's stepdaughter? Get out of here, now." But Elena didn't flinch. She felt a tiny hand clutch the hem of her apron. She bent down, placing a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder. "I may not have any rights here," Elena said, her voice steady, "but I recognize cruelty when I see it." The air grew thick with tension. Vivien was stunned by Elena's audacity. She stepped closer, ready to unleash a torrent of insults, when the bedroom door opened again. William Harper stood there, his face stern and his brow furrowed. "What is going on in here?" Vivien immediately changed her demeanor. She transformed into a pitiful victim in the blink of an eye. "William, thank goodness you're home," she exclaimed, placing a hand on her chest as if she had just endured a great shock. This maid," she suddenly burst into the room and terrified poor Lily. "I was trying to calm her down when she appeared and made everything chaotic." Elena stood up straight, still keeping Lily shielded behind her. "Mr. Harper, that's not true. I heard shouting, so I came to check, and I saw Ms. Blake threatening to lock Lily in her room." "An outrageous lie," Vivien interrupted, her eyes flashing with anger. "You're just trying to invent a story to make yourself look like a hero." William looked from one woman to the other, his expression unreadable. He listened to both of their words, but his gaze lingered longest on his daughter. Lily was still clinging to Elena's leg, her face hidden behind the maid's apron as if it were the only safe haven in the world. That image was more powerful than any words. After a moment of tense silence, William sighed. "Enough. I don't want any more scenes in my house." Vivien smiled triumphantly, believing she had won. But William turned to Elena, his voice having lost some of its edge. "Miss Torres, please take Lily out to the garden. She needs some fresh air." Elena hesitated for a second, then nodded. It was an order, but it was also a subtle gesture of trust. She gently took Lily's small hand and led her out of the room. Before leaving, she gave Vivien a steady look. Vivien returned it with a contemptuous smirk. As they walked down the stairs, Lily gently tugged on Elena's sleeve. "Please, don't leave me alone with her," the little girl whispered, her voice still choked with tears. Elena squeezed the small hand in hers. "I won't leave you, little princess. I promise." From the top of the stairs, William stood, his heart in turmoil. He didn't know whether to believe his fiancée or the image of his daughter seeking refuge with a complete stranger she had only met hours ago. A sense of unease crept into his heart, telling him that what he had just witnessed was only the tip of the iceberg. Part 2. Bonding and Schemes. The garden behind the Harper mansion was another world entirely. The air was fresh, carrying the gentle scent of roses and lavender. Warm sunlight filtered through the leaves, dancing on the lush green lawn. This peace was a stark contrast to the suffocating tension inside the house. Elena led Lily to a white wooden swing set under the shade of an old oak tree. The little girl was still trembling, her tiny hands still clutching Elena's. Elena sat down, gently pulling Lily into her lap. "It's all right now, little princess," she whispered, her voice as soft as a melody. "Out here, it's just you and me. No one is going to shout at you anymore." Lily lifted her tear-filled eyes, her voice barely a whisper. Why is Aunt Vivien so mean to me?" The innocent question was like a needle prick to Elena's heart. She sighed, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes, grown-ups become grumpy when they can't find their own happiness. But that is never, ever your fault. Do you understand? You are a wonderful little girl." Lily nodded, snuggling into Elena's embrace. "She looks like a wicked witch from a fairy tale." A fleeting smile crossed her face as she said it. Elena let out a soft chuckle. "She does," she said conspiratorially. "A wicked witch with no magic wand, but far too many high heels." That little joke worked. Lily giggled. A clear and lovely sound. It was perhaps the first time Elena had heard her truly laugh. Just then, The sharp click of heels on the stone path shattered the peace. Vivien appeared on the back porch, her arms crossed, her eyes throwing daggers of disdain at them. "What a touching scene," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "The little maid is playing child psychologist, is she?" Elena slowly stood up, deftly keeping Lily behind her. "I was just helping her calm down, Ms. Blake. Your job is to clean." Vivien stepped closer, her voice turning colder. "Not to fill her head with nonsense, and certainly not to speak ill of me to her." "I don't need to speak ill of you," Elena retorted, her gaze unwavering. "Your actions speak for themselves." Vivien's eyes narrowed. "Watch your tongue. Maids like you are easily replaced." Elena offered a wry smile. "That must be why you've gone through a dozen maids in the past year. Or perhaps, they just realize that working here is like taking care of 2 children instead of 1. Behind her, Lily let out a stifled giggle. Vivien's face flushed with anger. "How dare you? Dare to tell the truth?" Elena feigned innocence. "My apologies. I forgot that in this house, the truth is a luxury." "You're fired." Vivien shrieked. "You can't fire me." Elena remained calm. "Mr. Harper was the one who hired me. And as far as I know, he is still the owner of this house." Vivien was speechless. She glared at Elena one last time before spinning on her heel and storming away, leaving a trail of frustration in her wake. When Vivien was gone, Lily timidly peeked out. "Aren't you scared of her?" Elena knelt and smiled at the little girl. "Some things are scarier than angry words, little princess. Like staying silent when you see a good person being bullied. Now, how about we go to the kitchen? I think I smell pancakes." Lily's eyes lit up. Pancakes? In the large, modern kitchen, a warm atmosphere quickly took shape. Elena tied on an apron and began pulling ingredients from the refrigerator, while Lily sat perched on a high stool, watching with curiosity. "Do you really know how to make pancakes?" Lily asked. "I make the best pancakes in all of Texas," Elena winked. "But I'll need a brilliant assistant chef to make them perfect." "Really?" Lily clapped her hands in delight. "What can I do?" "You can be my official sous chef. First order of business, we need to crack some eggs." Elena patiently showed Lily how to crack the eggs without shattering the shells. When a small piece of shell fell into the bowl, she made an exaggeratedly serious face. "Oh no, it looks like this egg was wearing a helmet." Lily burst out laughing, a joyous, unrestrained sound that echoed through the kitchen, a sound that had likely been absent for a long time. They mixed the batter together, drawing funny shapes on the pancakes as they cooked in the pan. There was a lopsided heart, a squash star, and one that Elena tried to shape like a rabbit but Lily insisted looked more like an elephant with a headache. As the last of the pancakes were done, they sat at the small kitchen table, enjoying their creation. Flour and jam smudged both of their faces. In this cheerful atmosphere, Elena had an idea. "How about we create our own secret notebook?" she suggested. "A book just for our drawings and silly recipes." "Secret?" Lily whispered, her eyes wide with excitement. "Secret," Elena confirmed. "No one else gets to see it. Not even the witch." They spent the rest of the afternoon creating their special book. Elena drew simple shapes for Lily to color and copy. Lily, in turn, drew vibrant pictures from her imagination. She drew a picture of 2 people holding hands in the garden. "This is you and me," Lily said proudly. Elena's heart warmed. Suddenly, Lily looked up with innocent curiosity. "Elena, have you ever protected anyone before? You're very good at it." The question made Elena pause. She looked into Lily's clear eyes and decided to share a part of her story. "I have," she said softly. "A long time ago, I had a younger brother. He wasn't as strong as the other children, and he was often teased. Every time that happened, I would stand up for him." She didn't go into the details of the harsh words or difficult circumstances, but she conveyed the core emotion. I learned that when you love someone, you find the courage to face anything to protect them. You don't have to be big or strong, you just need a brave heart. Lily listened intently. She didn't understand everything, but she felt the sincerity in Elena's words. She picked up a crayon and drew a large heart between the two figures in her drawing. "You have a very brave heart," Lily said. Her words moved Elena more than any compliment could. She knew, from that moment on, the bond between them was no longer just that of an employer and employee. The next morning, the peaceful atmosphere was quickly shattered. Elena was dusting the living room when Vivien entered with William. Vivien's expression was one of great distress and panic. "William, I can't believe it," she said, her voice a theatrical, trembling whisper. "Your mother's crystal vase. It's been shattered." On the floor, right below the small table where the antique vase usually sat, lay a pile of sparkling shards. Elena froze. "That's impossible. When I cleaned last night, it was perfectly fine." "Oh, of course you'd deny it." Vivien turned to William, her eyes welling with fake tears. "Darling, she must have broken it while cleaning and tried to hide it." William looked at the wreckage on the floor, his expression hardening. That vase was a priceless heirloom from his mother. "Miss Torres, do you have an explanation?" Elena took a deep breath to calm herself. She knew this was a trap. "Mr. Harper, I can assure you I did not break it. And I can prove it." "Prove it?" Vivien scoffed. "How?" Elena ignored Vivien and spoke directly to William. "Sir, please look closely. Yesterday afternoon at 5 o'clock, I cleaned this entire room, including mopping the floor and dusting. The vase was perfectly intact at that time." She pointed to the floor. "First, these shards are all piled neatly in one spot. If someone accidentally dropped it, the pieces would have scattered much further." She stepped closer. "Second, and this is the most important part, please look at the largest shards. Do you see that thin, even layer of dust on their surfaces? That's the ambient household dust that settles overnight. If I had broken it while cleaning yesterday, the surfaces of these shards would be perfectly clean. They wouldn't have a uniform layer of dust like this." She paused, letting her words sink in. "This means the vase was broken after I had finished cleaning, likely late last night or early this morning. It was deliberately smashed right where it stood." William knelt, closely observing what Elena had pointed out. It was true. There was a faint, even film of dust on the shards, a detail one would never notice unless they were looking for it. Vivien turned pale. That's just a ridiculous excuse. There's dust everywhere." Elena shook her head. "It's not an excuse, ma'am. It's logic. Furthermore," she added, "the person who staged this forgot one small detail. My mopping solution from yesterday had completely dried. But underneath this pile of shards, the floor is slightly damp, as if someone placed a wet object down as a base before smashing the vase." Silence filled the room. Elena's explanation was too detailed, too logical to be dismissed. William stood up. His gaze on Vivien was no longer one of trust, but of deep suspicion. He didn't say anything, but his silence was more damning than any accusation. "William," Vivien stammered, "you can't possibly believe her." "I'll have someone clean this up," William interrupted her, his voice cold. He turned to Elena. "Miss Torres, please continue with your work." With that, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving Vivien standing frozen amidst her failed plan, her face a mask of anger and humiliation. Elena knew she had won this battle, but she also understood that the real war had only just begun. Part 3. The truth is revealed. In the days following the incident with the vase, a strange quiet settled over the Harper mansion. Vivien, after her humiliating defeat, had withdrawn. On the surface, she remained elegant, but there were no more overt taunts. Instead, there were glares as sharp as daggers and a silence thick with resentment. She was like a predator hiding in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Conversely, William seemed to have changed. He spent more time at home, often leaving his office earlier than planned. He spoke little, but he observed much more. He silently watched Elena patiently playing with Lily in the garden, how she taught the little girl to identify flowers, and how Lily's bright, clear laughter was heard more and more often. He saw his daughter, once timid and fearful, now chattering away to Elena with endless stories. Some afternoons, he would sit in his office, his mind not on the figures on the screen, but listening to the giggles that drifted in from the living room. His father's heart, which he thought had grown numb, began to feel warmth again. Elena sensed this change. She noticed that the way William looked at her was no longer that of a boss to an employee, but held respect and a hint of gratitude. Even so, she maintained a professional distance. She knew she was just a maid, and Lily's fragile happiness was her top priority. She felt like a tightrope walker, carefully balancing between protecting the child and her position in this complicated house. And then, the storm she had always felt brewing finally broke. On a Thursday evening, William announced he had an important meeting with international partners and would be home very late. Vivien seemed utterly delighted. The moment William's car pulled away, the sweet smile on her lips vanished, replaced by her usual cold expression. Elena was preparing a light dinner for Lily in the kitchen. The little girl was happily recounting seeing a blue butterfly in the garden when Vivien walked in, holding a glass of red wine. "Finish this milk and go to your room immediately," Vivien commanded, her voice devoid of emotion. "I need some quiet." Lily, slightly startled, accidentally spilled a small trickle of milk on her clean apron. It was just a tiny spot, but it became the perfect excuse for the rage Vivien had been suppressing for days. "Clumsy," Vivien hissed. "You're always causing trouble. How did your mother raise you? She must have been a commoner to have given birth to such a troublesome child." Elena immediately stood up. "Ma'am, please don't speak about her mother that way. I'll say what I want." Vivien slammed her wineglass on the table. "An abnormal child needs to be taught differently. My mommy was not a commoner." Lily suddenly shouted, her eyes blazing with anger and hurt. "You're the mean one. Don't talk about my mommy." The little girl's defiance seemed to be the final trigger. Vivien lost all control. In an instant, she swung her arm. Crack! A sharp, cruel slap landed on Lily's small face. The dry, brutal sound echoed through the kitchen, drowning out the child's gasp. Lily was stunned, one cheek turning bright red, tears instantly welling up in her eyes. "How dare you talk back to me?" Vivien growled, her eyes glinting with malice. Elena lunged forward without a second thought. She swept Lily into her arms, shielding her with her own body. "You've gone too far," she yelled, her voice trembling with rage. "You have no right to hit her." "I have every right." Vivien was about to say more when they both froze. Standing in the kitchen doorway was William. He had come back. The meeting was cancelled at the last minute, and he had decided to come home early to surprise his daughter. But the surprise he received was a nightmare. He had been standing there long enough to hear Vivien's insults, and to witness the cruel slap with his own eyes. William's face was pale, but his eyes had darkened into a terrifying storm of contained fury. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He was just silent. His silence was more frightening than any outburst. Vivien froze, the wineglass in her hand slipping and shattering on the floor. Red wine pooled around the broken shards, looking like a splash of blood. Elena held Lily tight, feeling the little girl's entire body shaking. She didn't know what William would do, but she knew, with absolute certainty, that everything had just changed forever. The next morning, no one in the mansion spoke a word to one another. Breakfast was held in a deathly silence. William was as cold as ice, refusing to even look at Vivien. Vivien, for her part, tried to act normal. but the hand holding her coffee cup trembled uncontrollably. Unable to bear it any longer, Vivien stood up and went into William's study, perhaps to find some privacy. She slammed the door shut. Elena was polishing silverware in the nearby dining room. She tried not to pay attention, but then she heard Vivien's voice on the phone, loud and filled with undisguised frustration. "Margaret, I can't take it anymore. The old man suspects me. It's all because of that meddling maid and that stupid child." Elena was about to walk away. She didn't want to eavesdrop. But Vivien's next words made her stop in her tracks. "My plan is about to fall apart. You don't understand. I've had to act for 2 years. 2 years of pretending to love a boring old man and taking care of a nuisance of a child. It was all for the money. I just needed to marry him, endure it for a few more years, then divorce him and take half his fortune. But now, that maid has ruined everything." Elena's heart felt like it stopped. This was no longer speculation. This was the truth, from the villain's own mouth. She remembered the broken vase. She remembered the slap from last night. She knew she had to do something. William needed to know all of it. Trembling, she pulled out her phone, turned on the voice recorder, and skillfully placed it near the crack of the door. Vivien's voice continued, laced with venom. "Does he really think I love him? How laughable. Every time I'm with him, all I can picture are the numbers in my bank account. As soon as I get rid of that maid, I'll find a way to win back his trust. Just you wait, I will never give up this easily." Elena quickly retrieved her phone as she heard Vivien's footsteps. She held her breath and quickly returned to her work, her heart pounding in her chest. Now, she had a weapon that could end it all. That evening, William requested that everyone dine together. The atmosphere at the table was so tense it could be cut with a knife. After the main course, Vivien, perhaps feeling she needed to seize the initiative, spoke first. "William, I think we need to have a serious talk," she began, trying to sound reasonable. "About Miss Torres. It's clear that her presence is causing too many problems. I think we should let her go. It was her final mistake." William slowly placed his fork down. He looked directly at Vivien, his eyes cold. "Vivien, I agree we need to have a serious talk. But not about Elena. About the slap yesterday." Vivien flinched. I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, you don't?" William said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. "You don't know about hitting my daughter, a 5-year-old child, because she spilled a little milk? It was just a little tap to discipline her. She was being disrespectful." Vivien tried to defend herself, her voice becoming shrill. "You weren't there. You don't understand." "I was there," William said, enunciating every word. "I saw everything. I heard everything." Vivien's face went as white as a sheet. All her lies were useless, but she still tried to fight back. "She provoked me. She's a spoiled child." Elena could no longer stay silent. She was only defending the memory of her mother. "That is not being spoiled. That is loyalty." "You shut up," Vivien shrieked at Elena. "Yes, Miss Torres," William said, though his eyes were fixed on Vivien. "Perhaps there are things you haven't said. Perhaps we should listen to a different story." He turned to Elena and gave a slight nod. Elena understood. She calmly took out her phone and placed it on the middle of the table. "Ms. Blake, perhaps you'd like to hear your conversation with Ms. Margaret from this morning." She pressed play. Vivien's sharp, hateful voice filled the silent dining room. "It was all for the money. I just needed to marry him, endure it for a few more years, then divorce him and take half his fortune. Does he really think I love him? How laughable." The recording continued to play. Every word a hammer blow, nailing shut the coffin of Vivien's deceit. She sat frozen, her face shifting from red to deathly pale. When the recording ended, no one spoke. Finally, William spoke, his voice no longer angry, only filled with disappointment and disgust. "Vivien, you have 15 minutes. Pack your things and get out of my house. William, you can't. Vivien burst into tears, but they were tears of fury at her failure. I can explain. It was all a misunderstanding. There is nothing to explain. William stood up, his tall frame radiating authority. I have been blind. You not only deceived me, you abused my daughter. Get out. Immediately. He gave her no other chance. He turned to Elena, who was holding Lily in her arms. Thank you, Elena. Thank you for showing me the truth. Vivien knew it was over. She stood up, threw Elena a look of pure hatred, and stumbled out of the room. Half an hour later, they heard the front door slam shut, followed by the sound of a car's engine roaring to life and speeding off into the night. The witch had been exiled from the castle. In the dining room, only 3 people remained. William sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Elena held Lily, gently comforting her. Silence fell, but this time, it was not a tense one. It was the silence after a storm has passed, leaving behind a quiet peace, even amidst the wreckage that still needed to be cleared away. Part 4. New Storms and Acceptance from the Past. After Vivien's departure, a strange tranquility settled over the Harper mansion. But it was a different kind of quiet. It was no longer heavy and oppressive, but rather an empty space, a little awkward, waiting to be filled with new sounds. In those first few days, William, Elena, and Lily seemed to be learning how to walk in their own home again. They ate breakfast together, no longer punctuated by Vivien's sarcastic remarks, only the soft clinking of cutlery and Lily's small stories. William made a clumsy effort to reconnect with his daughter. He read her fairy tales before bed, his voice stiff at first but gradually growing warmer. He learned how to braid Lily's hair, and though the result was a lopsided plait, the sound of their shared laughter lit up the room. Elena quietly observed it all. She didn't interfere, only stayed nearby as a gentle support, handing him the comb when he couldn't find it, or preparing a glass of warm milk for Lily after the story was finished. She was like an invisible glue, slowly piecing the fragments of this family back together. An unspoken understanding began to form between them. One afternoon, seeing William struggling with a report, she quietly placed a cup of hot ginger tea on his desk. He looked up, his eyes no longer distant but filled with sincere gratitude. "Thank you, Elena." 2 simple words that held a world of meaning. They were in a fragile, peaceful state, like the calm surface of a lake after a storm. But they didn't know that the tsunami Vivien had created was only temporarily receding to gather strength for an even more devastating attack. That wave crashed on a Tuesday morning. William was preparing to leave for the office when he received a call from his lawyer. His expression changed rapidly, from surprise to disbelief, and finally to a cold, contained anger. After hanging up, he said nothing, simply picked up his tablet and opened a tabloid news site. Elena, who was helping Lily tie her shoes, glanced over curiously. On the screen was an article with a sensational, massive headline: "Millionaire Tycoon's Tragedy, Fiancée Thrown Out in Tears Amid Skimming Maid's Plot." Below it was a large photo of Vivien, her face streaked with tears, looking utterly pitiful as she dragged a suitcase from the mansion. The article was a one-sided diatribe, filled with fabricated lies and distortions. Vivien was portrayed as a woman devoted to her fiancé and his child, only to be victimized by a maid with a mysterious past. The article quoted close sources, undoubtedly invented by Vivien, claiming that Elena had used sophisticated tricks to seduce her boss, create terrible misunderstandings, and ultimately usurp Vivien's place. "She's a wolf in sheep's clothing," one excerpt read. "She even manipulated the poor child to turn against the stepmother who loved her dearly." Elena felt the blood freeze in her veins. Her ears were ringing. Every word in the article was like a dagger twisting inside her. She felt sick, not with anger, but with a sense of helplessness against such extreme, shameless cruelty. "Sir," she stammered, not knowing what to say. William didn't look at her. He just turned off the tablet, his face an emotionless mask. "Elena, get Lily ready for school. I need to make some calls." His terrifyingly calm demeanor worried Elena even more. She spent the rest of the day with a heavy heart. She was scared. Scared that these dirty words would affect William, his business. Scared that she had brought ruin to his reputation. That evening, she gathered all her courage and knocked on the door of his study. "Mr. Harper," she began, her voice trembling. "I read the article. I am so sorry. I never wanted you and Lily to suffer because of me. Perhaps I should leave. Once I'm gone, everything will quiet down." William was standing by the window, looking out at the dark garden. He turned around, and for the first time that day, she saw the emotion in his eyes. It wasn't suspicion or anger directed at her. It was fury for the person who had caused this, and a fierce protectiveness. He walked toward her. "Leave? Elena, what are you talking about? I don't want to be a burden to you." "You are not a burden," he interrupted, his voice firm. "You are the person who saved my family. I will not let you face this alone. We will face it together." He looked directly into her eyes. "You are no longer just a maid in this house, Elena. You are part of this family. And I will protect my family." His words were like a warm current, soothing her panicked heart. Tears welled up in her eyes, but this time, they were tears of gratitude. The next day, William Harper held a press conference in the lobby of his company headquarters. Dozens of journalists were present, cameras flashing incessantly. Elena wasn't there. She was at home with Lily, but she watched everything on a live broadcast, her heart pounding. William appeared, poised and calm. He showed no signs of being flustered by the forest of lenses. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice echoing through the microphones. "I am here today to clarify some false information that has been recently published. My relationship with Ms. Vivien Blake has ended. It was a personal decision, and I will not comment further on the reasons. However," he paused, looking straight into one of the cameras, as if looking into everyone's eyes. "What was written about Ms. Elena Torres is a complete fabrication and is defamatory in nature. Ms. Torres is a woman of integrity and kindness. She has cared for my daughter with the utmost dedication and love. My daughter and I hold her in the highest regard. Any attack on her honor is an attack on my family. I will not tolerate it." He didn't recount Vivien's schemes, didn't turn the story into a cheap drama. He simply used the truth and his own credibility to defend her. He concluded the press conference with a stern declaration that he would take legal action against any publication that continued to spread false information. The TV screen went black, but the image of William standing there, resolute and steadfast, remained etched in Elena's mind. For the first time, she felt like she had a man willing to stand up and shield her. And she knew, her feelings for him had long since surpassed mere gratitude. After the press conference, the media storm quickly subsided. The truth didn't need to be spelled out. William's decisive action said it all. Life in the mansion returned to peace, but this time, that peace was fortified by a deep bond. One weekend afternoon, while helping Elena tidy up the playroom for Lily, the little girl found an old wooden box tucked away on top of a wardrobe. "What's in this box?" William, who was helping them, smiled. "That's your mother's memory box." He took the box down, blowing away a thin layer of dust. The three of them sat together on the rug. William opened the box reverently. Inside were small items that held a universe of memories. A few photos of a woman with a radiant smile identical to Lily's, a small silver bracelet, a dried lavender flower pressed between the pages of a book. Elena watched quietly, not wanting to intrude on their private moment. But Lily pulled her hand. "Look with us. My mommy is so pretty." At the bottom of the box was a stack of letters tied with a blue silk ribbon. William picked them up and noticed one envelope addressed separately. "To my dearest Lily, on a day you need me most." William's hand trembled slightly. He had never seen this letter before. Perhaps his wife had written it in her final days. "Do you want me to read it to you?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Lily nodded. William carefully opened the envelope. Elena was about to stand up and leave, but William gestured for her to stay. He began to read, his voice filled with a deep love. "My dearest Lily, if you are reading this letter, it means I can no longer be by your side to watch you grow. But don't be sad, my love, because I will always be in your heart, in your smile, and in the gentle wind that brushes through your hair. I want you to know that life is a wonderful gift. Live bravely, laugh often, and always be kind, my dear." The letter was filled with words of love and guidance. Elena felt her eyes blur with tears. And then, she heard William read the final passage, a passage that seemed to be written for both him and her. "And know this, my love. A heart as warm and big as your father's is not meant to be alone forever. If one day, he finds another kind soul, someone who can make him laugh again, and who loves you as her own, then open your heart and welcome her, Lily, because her joy will be his happiness, and his happiness will be mine, wherever I may be." When William finished reading, the room fell silent, but it was a silence full of emotion. Tears streamed down his cheeks, but a peaceful smile was on his lips. Lily didn't cry. She just quietly leaned her head against Elena's shoulder. Elena felt as if an invisible hand was gently placed on her shoulder, an acceptance from the past. The final wall around William's heart seemed to crumble. The ghost of guilt and pain had been soothed. He looked up, meeting Elena's eyes. His gaze was no longer just one of gratitude, but of a deep, sincere affection with nothing left to hide. He said nothing, just gently reached out and took her hand. In that moment, 3 hands, one large, one small, and one belonging to the woman who had bravely stepped into their lives, clasped together. They were no longer 3 separate individuals living under one roof. They had truly become a family. Part 5. The Final Test in Harmony. After Sarah's letter was read, a profound and magical change took place in the Harper mansion. The last dark curtain of the past had been lifted, making way for a warm and hopeful light. William was no longer a father burdened by guilt. He became open, cheerful, and the love he had for Elena was now free of any hesitation. Elena, too, felt liberated. She was no longer a replacement or an outsider, but truly an essential piece of the puzzle, welcomed by both the present and the past. Their life unfolded in a sweet harmony. The evenings were no longer silent but filled with the sound of Lily's laughter as William tickled her, the sound of Elena softly humming a tune in the kitchen, and the sound of lively conversation at the dinner table. They were like a true family portrait, painted with the brightest of colors. Elena taught William how to make heart-shaped pancakes. William taught her how to play chess, and they both were often soundly defeated by Lily's no-rules moves. They were in the heart of a simple happiness, a precious tranquility they had fought so hard to achieve. And just when they least expected it, the final test came knocking. The doorbell rang on a Friday afternoon, as Elena and Lily were decorating cookies in the kitchen. William went to open it and froze. Standing on the porch was an elderly woman with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her face still retaining the sharp, elegant lines of her youth. She wore a formal suit, her back ramrod straight, and her eyes stared directly at William with a scrutinizing gaze. It was Eleanor, Sarah's mother, Lily's grandmother. "Mother," William breathed, his voice tinged with surprise. "Why are you here without calling first? Do I need to give notice to visit the home of my son-in-law and my granddaughter?" Eleanor replied, her tone anything but warm. She pushed her small suitcase inside. "I heard that many things have happened. I thought I should come and see for myself for a while." The cheerful atmosphere in the house immediately chilled. Lily ran out, joyfully shouting, "Grandma!" and Eleanor instantly broke into a rare, loving smile, bending down to hug her granddaughter tightly. But when she looked up and saw Elena standing in the kitchen doorway, that smile vanished. Her eyes swept over her from head to toe, a cold look filled with judgment and suspicion. "Hello, ma'am. I'm Elena," she said politely. Eleanor merely gave a curt nod. "I've heard about you." The following days turned into a quiet but incredibly tense examination. Eleanor was an intelligent and sharp woman. She didn't openly criticize or start arguments, but her disapproval was present in every small detail. "Sarah used to stew this dish a bit longer. The meat would be more tender," she commented offhandedly at dinner, even though Elena's food was delicious. "Let me do it," she said when she saw Elena about to braid Lily's hair. "After all, I am her grandmother." She took over nearly all of Lily's care, from reading bedtime stories to taking her for walks. She did it not out of malice towards Elena, but out of a deep pain and an overprotective devotion to her daughter's memory and her granddaughter's well-being. In her eyes, Elena was a stranger who had too quickly taken Sarah's place. Elena felt all of this. She felt herself being pushed to the periphery, but she didn't resist or show any resentment. She understood. She understood the pain of a mother who had lost her child, and the fear of a grandmother worried for her grandchild. So, she chose to take a step back. She continued to do her job, treating Eleanor with the utmost respect. When Eleanor took care of Lily, she would quietly prepare a light snack for them both. When she noticed Eleanor looking tired after a day of playing with Lily, she would make a cup of chamomile tea to help her relax. William was stuck in the middle, feeling extremely awkward. One evening, when they were alone, Eleanor spoke to him directly. "William, what are you doing?" she asked, her tone severe. "It hasn't been that long since Sarah passed. Are you already rushing to find another woman to fill the void? Have you thought about Lily's feelings?" "Mother, it's not what you think," William explained patiently. "Elena is not a replacement. She is a wonderful person. She brought laughter back to Lily, and to me. Can't you see how much happier she is?" "I see. But is it real happiness? Or just a temporary novelty?" Eleanor sighed. "I'm just afraid that you're making a wrong decision out of loneliness, and the one who will be hurt in the end is Lily." William didn't argue further. He knew words were meaningless at this point. Only time and actions could prove everything. And then, the turning point came on a stormy night. Around 2 in the morning, Elena was awakened by a dry cough and a weak whimpering cry from Lily's room. She immediately sat up and ran to the girls' room. At the same time, the door opened and Eleanor and William also rushed in. Lily was lying in bed, her face flushed, her breathing ragged. She had a very high fever. Eleanor was frantic. She touched her granddaughter's forehead and cried out, "My God, she's burning up. William, call the doctor, now." William hastily grabbed his phone, his hands fumbling slightly. In the chaos, only Elena remained preternaturally calm. The experience of caring for her younger brother in the past had prepared her not to panic. "Grandma, could you please help me get a bowl of warm water and some clean cloths?" she said to Eleanor, her voice clear and reassuring. "William, while we wait for the doctor, could you please find the fever reducer in the medicine cabinet? I'll stay here with her." Her instructions were not commanding, but full of confidence and efficiency. Everyone seemed to calm down and followed her lead. Elena sat by the bed, gently wiping Lily down with a warm cloth. She whispered sweet nothings into the girl's ear, softly humming a lullaby that Lily loved. Her hands were steady and gentle, every movement exuding experienced care. Eleanor stood beside her, watching everything. She saw how Elena soothed Lily, how the little girl, even in her delirium, sought out Elena's warmth. She saw the genuine worry in the young woman's eyes, a worry born from true love. The doctor arrived and said it was just a common viral fever, nothing too dangerous, and that she just needed careful monitoring. After the doctor left, William and Eleanor were exhausted. "Elena, you should get some rest," William said. "I'll watch her." "Let me," Elena gently shook her head. "She needs someone with her constantly tonight. You and Grandma are tired. Let me handle it." She gave them no chance to refuse. She pulled an armchair close to the bed, sat down, and took Lily's hand. She sat like that, sleepless all night, occasionally changing the cloth, checking the temperature, and whispering words of comfort whenever Lily stirred. Early the next morning, as the first rays of the new day streamed into the room, Lily's fever finally broke. She was breathing evenly and sleeping soundly. Eleanor quietly entered the room. The sight before her made her stop in her tracks. Elena had fallen asleep in the chair, her head resting against the side of the bed, but one hand was still holding Lily's small hand tightly, as if afraid that letting go would make her disappear. She looked exhausted, but her face was peaceful. Eleanor silently walked over and draped a light blanket over Elena's shoulders. In that moment, all the suspicion, all the prejudice in her heart melted away. She no longer saw a maid or a replacement. She only saw a mother, caring for her child with all her gentleness and strength. A while later, Elena woke up. She saw Eleanor sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at her with completely different eyes. "Shall we go down to the kitchen for a cup of tea, Elena?" Eleanor suggested softly. In the quiet morning kitchen, the two women sat opposite each other. Eleanor was the first to speak. "I was wrong," she said, her voice no longer stern, only sincere. "I came here, carrying my own prejudice and pain. I tried to find every reason to prove that you weren't worthy." She looked directly into Elena's eyes. "But last night, I saw everything. I didn't see someone trying to replace my daughter. I saw a mother taking care of her child. The way you love Lily, that is something no one can fake." Tears began to well up in the usually stoic woman's eyes. "Sarah, my daughter, the thing she wanted most in this world was for Lily to be happy and loved. Thank you, Elena. Thank you for giving that to her." She reached out and took Elena's hand. "Sarah would be so happy to know her granddaughter has such a wonderful second mother. Promise me. Promise you will take good care of William and Lily." Elena was moved. She squeezed Eleanor's hand back. "I promise," she said through her own tears. "With all my heart." Eleanor's acceptance was like the final missing piece of the puzzle. It wasn't just the approval of a relative. It was a blessing from the very heart of the family's past. The final test had been overcome, not with confrontation, but with the strength of patient and sincere love. Now, the path ahead of them was completely clear. Part 6. The Happy Ending. Eleanor's blessing was like the last summer rain, washing away any lingering anxieties and allowing the love in the Harper family to blossom. The months that followed passed in a sweet, unexpected peace. The house, once a cold space of sorrow and schemes, had truly become a home, filled with laughter and the aroma of family meals. Eleanor had returned home, but her relationship with Elena had become incredibly close. They often video called, with Eleanor patiently teaching Elena the recipe for an apple pie that Sarah had once loved, while Elena sent her the latest drawings by Lily. Love, in its own miraculous way, had connected two women from different generations, through the memory of one who was gone and the love for one child. William had transformed completely. He was no longer the distant tycoon buried in his work. He learned to leave the office on time, learned to set aside numbers and contracts to build pillow forts with Lily in the living room. His love for Elena was no longer expressed in quiet glances or words of thanks, but in open and gentle gestures of affection. He held her hand when they walked together in the garden. He placed a light kiss on her hair while she was engrossed in a book. He began to call her "my dear," a simple phrase that held a world of intimacy and commitment. They became an inseparable trio. On weekends, they would often drive out to the countryside, flying a kite together on a windy hill, or having a picnic by a clear blue lake. Lily was the center of that small universe, but she was also its strongest connecting thread. She was very perceptive and always found ways to create private moments for her father and Mama Elena. "Daddy, Mama Elena's hands are cold. You should hold them to keep them warm," she'd say during a movie night. "Mama Elena, Daddy's shoulders are sore. You should give him a massage," she'd whisper on another occasion. Each time, William and Elena would look at each other and laugh at the cleverness of their little matchmaker, but they would still do as she suggested. Their love grew naturally and strong, cultivated by sincerity, tested by storms, and now watered by daily happiness. And then, William knew it was time. He decided to propose to Elena on a late autumn day, when the sky was clear blue and the maple leaves in the park were turning a brilliant crimson. He chose the very park where Elena had taught Lily to ride her bike, the place where he had first seen a glimmer of hope for his family. His plan had a very important accomplice: Lily. He had confided his intentions to his daughter, and she was thrilled. "Really, Daddy?" she had exclaimed. "Does that mean Mama Elena will stay with us forever and ever?" "Yes, my princess," William smiled, "but I need your help. This will be our little secret, okay?" Lily nodded seriously, placing a finger to her lips. In the days that followed, she became an excellent actress. William rehearsed his proposal with Lily. He would kneel before her, and she would give him brutally honest feedback. "No, Daddy," she said after the first practice run. "You look too nervous. You have to smile really big. The second time," she advised, "you have to say 'I love you' so much too. They always say that in the movies." Finally, after a few dress rehearsals, the plan was ready. William told Elena they were going for a special picnic to celebrate the beautiful weather. Elena, suspecting nothing, happily packed a basket of food and went to the park with them. They spread a blanket on the grass, right next to the small path where Lily had taken her first bicycle ride. The atmosphere was perfect. Lily, after finishing a few sandwiches, made an excuse to chase a squirrel and quickly disappeared behind a nearby bush, holding a toy camera, ready for her role as press photographer. Only William and Elena remained. He took her hand, his gaze deep and searching. "Elena," he began, his voice slightly trembling, "from the first day you stepped into that house, everything changed. You brought light to a place that was filled with shadows. You taught me that after a storm, a rainbow can still appear." He looked toward the small path. "Right here, in this spot, I watched you teach my daughter how to balance on a bicycle. But in truth, you were teaching me how to balance my own life again. You taught me how to be a father again, and you taught me how to open my heart to love again." Elena felt her eyes blurring. Her heart was beating wildly in her chest. "I once thought that happiness was something I would never have again," William continued. "But you showed me that happiness isn't about forgetting the past, but about building a new future from what we have. My future, Elena, I can't imagine it without you and Lily." And then, he slowly knelt on one knee on the grass. He took a small, blue velvet box from his pocket. "Elena Torres," he said, his voice now steady, full of love. "I don't just want you to be my wife. I want you to officially be Lily's mother. Will you marry me?" He opened the box. Inside was a simple but elegant platinum ring, with a single sapphire stone as blue as Elena's eyes. Tears of joy began to stream down her cheeks. She couldn't speak, could only nod her head repeatedly, a radiant smile blooming on her face. "I will," she whispered. "Yes, I will." At that exact moment, A triumphant shout broke the quiet moment. "Hooray!" She said yes. Lily jumped out from behind the bush, clapping and leaping for joy. She ran towards them and threw her arms around them both, creating a warm, complete family hug. William slid the ring onto Elena's finger, and under the golden light of the autumn afternoon, they shared a kiss. Not just a kiss of romantic love, but a kiss that sealed the beginning of a family, forever. Their wedding was held 3 months later, on a warm spring day. It was not a lavish, ostentatious event. Instead, they chose to have an intimate ceremony right in the garden of the Harper mansion, a place that had witnessed so many of their trials and tribulations. The garden was now decorated with hundreds of daisies, Lily's favorite flower, and pristine white silk ribbons. The guests were only their closest friends and family, Eleanor, a few of William's trusted colleagues, and Elena's old friends. Elena wore a simple, elegant ivory wedding dress. Her hair was neatly braided, dotted with a few small daisies. She didn't look like a queen, but like a goddess of spring, beautiful and gentle. William waited for her at the makeshift altar under the oak tree, dressed in a navy blue suit. His eyes never left her for a second as she walked towards him. But the absolute star of the ceremony was Lily. She wore a little princess dress, looking incredibly serious about her duty as the ring-bearer. She walked down the aisle, which was scattered with petals, carefully holding a small satin pillow. When she arrived, she handed the rings to the officiant and then turned to the guests, announcing proudly, "They're getting married now. And then there will be cake." The entire garden filled with warm laughter. Their vows were not written on paper, but spoken from the heart. William promised to love and protect his 2 girls forever, and promised to try to remember to put his socks in the laundry basket. Elena promised to make heart-shaped pancakes for the rest of their lives, to always use humor to face difficulties, and to unconditionally love the man and the little girl who had completely changed her life. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Lily shouted, "You can kiss her now," before he could even finish his sentence. That evening, after the party had wound down and Lily was sound asleep in her room, William and Elena sat together on the porch swing, watching the stars glitter in the night sky. "You know," Elena said, resting her head on his shoulder, "when I first came here, I never could have dreamed that I would find a family." William wrapped his arm around her. "And I never dreamed that a stubborn Texan housekeeper could steal the hearts of both me and Lily in just a few weeks," he chuckled softly, kissing the top of her head. "Do you think Sarah would approve?" she asked quietly, a question born from a deep respect. William was silent for a moment. He looked up at the sky, as if searching for a particular star. Then he smiled, a smile of complete peace. "I'm sure she would. The only thing Sarah ever wanted was for Lily to be loved and protected. You've done both of those things better than anyone I could ever have imagined." He held her tighter. "She wouldn't just approve, Elena. She would be so grateful to you." They sat like that, wrapped in each other's arms, under a canopy of stars. They had found something that many people spend a lifetime searching for. A true home, built not on blood or duty, but on sincere love, shared laughter, and the certainty that they would always be there for each other, no matter what.